Welcome everyone. Here we are today for this live session with one of the most honorable figure from Dehradun in the literary world, and I'm Shubhi Belwal from Team Booknerds. And let's talk about our guest for today, Jaskiran Chopra. Telling first more about her, she is a journalist, writer, poet, professor of English, and whatnot. So let's welcome her with warm greetings. Welcome, ma'am, for a live session today, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me here. It's a great pleasure, and I welcome all the viewers to the session. And I thank Team Book Nerds for it.
Yeah. So I have been very excited for this session for the major reason that I would like to first share here is that today, I would like to discuss all your books that we have here. And yes, the Yesterday Once More, your latest one. And I am so glad that this was the first read of mine of this year. And this is exactly one of the books that I would have read according to my reading resolutions for 2021.
Oh, that's really wonderful of you to say that. Thank you very much.
So, telling more about Jaskiran Chopra, she has been a journalist for many years now, and she is also teaching in university. She's a professor of literature, and she has written many books. Like Yesterday Once More, Mera Sheher, which is the poetry book in Urdu. Then we have a novel, Autumn Raga, which is semi-autobiographical, I guess. And then we have Memories of Another Day. So we are going to talk about all these books, going to know more about her writing and reading experiences. But very firstly, I would like to ask you that how has been your reading and writing experience in the pandemic period that we all are dealing with?
Oh, yes, the pandemic period has indeed been very difficult for everybody. Although, of course, we must admit that it has taught us a lot. And I'm lucky that, I could use my time to write Yesterday Once More. And another book I completed, which is going to be released very soon, that is on Hindi cinema, the golden stars of the silver screen. It's called Galaxy. So I managed to do these two. And Yesterday Once More was written and published during this period. So that way it has been very productive for me. And the reading has been mostly academic because we have been having our classes. So I had to, put in my time for that also. And of course, reading of poetry, which is another, it's one of my great passions, reading Urdu poetry. So I go back to the masters, to Ghalib, to Faiz, my favorites, all of them, Sahir, Ludhianvi. So I keep reading those books, in between all the time, the divans of the great shires. So that has been, it has been quite a lot of reading and writing, yes, for me this year, 2020.
That's relatable to me as well because the lockdown period has been, tolerable for me only because of the help of the books and the writing that I did, all the reading. So yes, like being a reader, I can completely relate to it that if not for books, it would have been very difficult to pass this time. So, talking about your latest book first, Yesterday Once More, my reading resolution that I mentioned in the beginning was to read more of the books which are written by the authors who are from my city or my state and who are telling their experiences about the city, and was also about reading more of the works from the local authors. And so, this book fit in all these criterias. And yeah. So the book is basically for the viewers that it's a collection of, I would say, essays. It's not entirely fictional or non-fictional. It's like a beautiful blend of both the areas. And the book is very comfortable to read because it's divided into different small sections where you can indulge in whichever section you want to. And the book basically talks about the memories, nostalgia that the author is feeling through all these years that they have spent in city and away from city, the changes that they have observed from 70s to 90s, then to today's time. And another very beautiful thing is that she has shared such small instances from her life that she has spent, from her childhood, from her youth, that makes you feel that as if you know her from such a long time. And yes, as I was reading this book, with my mom sitting beside me in afternoon in the garden, and I just said to her that this book feels like as if I'm having a conversation with the author while I'm sipping hot tea and coffee, and we are simply talking. We are like having chit chat conversation. So that was the feeling that I felt while I was going through the pages, and that was beautiful. Um, if I talk about my experience first, so yes, it's like I'm a 90s kid. So I have seen some of the things, some of the feel that you have mentioned in the book about Dehradun or about the old charm of the city. And then I've also been in that transitionary phase where things were changing like they are now. So it has been kind of a memory down the lane where I was also able to relate some of the things, also was able to know some of the things that had been there before.
You. Yes.
I was born, and also was able to relate to some of the things that, yes, which are happening right now, and some I don't agree with, like how they're going and all. So, ma'am, you tell us that how was your experience writing the book, and what's your whole feel about it that now it's out and among the readers?
Actually, even Memories of Another Day, the earlier book, was quite similar. And that also talked about a vanishing world and maybe a vanished one to some extent, but some of the things we can still see remnants of them somewhere in the city. So we can say still a vanishing one. So my effort was always to, record my memories of the city because I've been very, very attached to the valley and I've grown up here. I've studied here in school. I've seen the actual, charming valley of canals and orchards and tongas. So I wanted to kind of, record all that for my own self and for others who would care to know what it was earlier. And those who have known it like that, they feel happy while reading all this, and they also to some extent feel sad. So it's a mixture of that sadness that it's gone and it's going, and happiness at reliving those old times. So this comes to nostalgia, which is a mixture of pain and joy, and happiness and suffering to some extent. When you look back at things that are no more, then that sadness is very obvious in that feeling. But for me, nostalgia has been quite a backbone, for my work, for my personality, for my thinking. So I have an overdose of nostalgia, I think, in my personality. So that made me realize that I should capture all these moments, these little moments that used to come back to me in my memories. So I wanted to capture them. So that's why I wrote all these things, and in such great detail that I would never probably be able to forget them. I didn't ever want to forget. So that was my way of, capturing them in these pages and photographs.
And how beautifully you have done them. And yes, the photographs as well, I was able to relate to some of them. And yes, like they rightly call you the nostalgia expert, I guess, because even the book Autumn Raga, it's also about nostalgia. And, like it's the story of a woman who goes for this journey inside and outside, both as well, when she's coming back to the place which she left long back. So, yes, like if we see through your works, nostalgia is something that is prevalent in all of them, and it's there is a beautiful charm to it, and more when you're able to relate to it like I was able to. So I think people who are from Dehradun, it's like really a piece of cake that they should definitely try and have a bite of and enjoy it, and enjoy the sweetness of it, because nostalgia, it's not just about what we have lost, I feel, but it's also about that what we are left with and what we have to preserve for the future. So, yeah.
Absolutely. You have to preserve it in some way or the other by sharing it with other like-minded people, or just writing about it or remembering it, and never allowing yourself to go away from it. Actually, at one time, as I'm sure you would be knowing as you're a student of literature, that nostalgia was looked upon as a very negative feeling and negative emotion, and it was seen as a sickness, that
Yeah.
you're longing for home. The sailors who were not able to go home for a long time, they're longing, and they would actually fall sick with nostalgia and homesickness, and that's how it was looked upon. But later on, it got positive connotations, and it was looked upon as very poetic and romantic. That's
Indeed, indeed it is. So, how your romance with reading and writing began?
Yeah, my romance with reading and writing began very long ago, very early in my life, because my parents happened to be both writers. And I remember among my first memories is, my father sitting and by the fireside. And in those days, we used to have fireplaces here. So
Yeah.
he would be writing in the evening. He was a bureaucrat, but he was at the same time a writer. So he mainly wrote in Punjabi. His name is Mahinder Singh Sarna, and he went on to win the Sahitya Academy and many other awards. And his work has been translated widely into various languages: Hindi, English, and of course other languages also. So, and my mother, she's a poet, and she still sometimes writes poetry. So I grew up in that environment of reading and writing. All we used to see were books and bookshelves, and so we grew up like that, my brother and I. And he happens to be a very well-known writer, my brother, Navteet Sarna. He's a diplomat and author. So he has done far more many books than I have. So it's a kind of, it's in the genes, I think, and the environment
Definitely.
and the
Yeah.
heritage, both have worked. And of course, when you see all that in your growing years, then you naturally fall in love with reading. And I remember I started, of course, as all children do, start with Enid Blyton and those books. But I went on very soon to the classics. I had a great love for the classics. And I remember, even now I have those early editions of books like Little Women, Good Wives, and all those books of Alcott, and hardbound books, which were a little, which had a big print and were meant a little bit for children. Maybe they were
Yeah. Children
adaptations.
editions. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I have all those, and I started with those, and I just fell in love with all that, So I could never go away from the books again in my life.
I also have a children edition of Little Women.
It is amazing. It's amazing, absolutely. Just
Yeah. So that's something that I would agree with you over there, that environment, it really affects us, especially when we are talking about art. So the environment that we have grown up into, it really, really influences us. And Dehradun is a place which really provides you with that kind of charm and that kind of environment, that solace it gives you. That even if you're not an avid reader, but still you would feel like on a lazy
Yes.
afternoon that I should pick a book and at least read a pages or two.
That's true. It does have that kind of an air about it. And the days when I was in school, you cannot imagine Shubi. I mean, the kind of skies we had and the kind of mountains. I mean, they were totally of a different hue, absolutely unpolluted and green and blue everywhere. And of course, it was a very idyllic kind of an environment. This Dehradun is far from that. It's
Right,
absolutely very
right.
come very far. And so when I was in school, I started writing poetry. I started with poetry, and that too in Urdu, because my father was also an Urdu scholar. So I learned from him, and he used to quote couplets from the big Urdu poets, the famous Urdu poets, and I would ask him the meanings. And then there was a shop which is still there in Paltan Bazaar, that is National News Agency. So there, you would get these little books of Urdu poetry written in Devanagari script. Of course, Ghalib in Devanagari, Mir, Zok, Dag, all of them you would get there, and the meaning would be written, below the ghazal,
Yeah.
the Urdu ka word, and then explaining it in Hindi. So I used to get those, and then I would read them and look at the meanings, and that's how I learned bit by bit, the language, the vocabulary. So my interest in Urdu was like really strong when I was in school. So what I started writing first was Urdu poetry in my notebooks of school, on the back pages I would be writing. Started from there. The
That's
romance with Urdu.
That's wonderful and so sweet. So, your works basically they're talking about Dehradun, the places nearby, Mussoorie. So, was that voluntary, or when you sat down to write something, you naturally went to these places?
Yeah, actually, they are an integral part of my memories. I spent all those years, my school years, either in Mussoorie or in Dehradun. Mussoorie, we would go every year for two months for the summer vacations. We would live there. So, and for another part also, we lived for a longer time. So, I was always very fascinated by mountains and hills. Really, really, like when the time would come back to Dehradun, I would just throw tantrums and say that I don't want to go back. I won't leave me here. So I was very fascinated by mountains and still am. So all those, little experiences that I had, used to go with my cousins and go around the town, the bazaars, and enjoy all those games that were available that time. They were very primitive compared to today's video games and all those things. But all those, memories of the streets and bazaars and lanes of Mussoorie, they stayed with me for long. Even today, I mean, even in Yesterday Once More, I've written, quite a few things, and I've written about the Green restaurant, and the chapter is called At the Green. So, what we used to do at the Green, and how the Green is still around, but it has changed a lot ever since that, ever since the 70s and 80s, it has changed greatly. So all those little details, I think somewhere they were hidden in my memory, somewhere in my subconscious mind, and even unconscious mind perhaps, and they all came out when I started penning them down. So Mussoorie becomes a great, it's a real beloved city for me,
Yes, it
along
is.
with Dehradun. Yes.
Yeah. And once you are in these cities, then you are, like belonging to these places forever. Like you cannot just forget the memories or let the memories fade away, because
Yes.
they really take you deep within yourself.
Yes.
And because I also spent my childhood in Dehradun, so talking about the book Yesterday Once More, it was something that I was able to relate with at such minuscule level that brought so much happiness and warmth to my heart.
Yes. Yes.
And talking about the little things that you have mentioned, like one chapter over here is about Dalanwala. And now my father's office is in the place, and it's a huge building,
Mm.
and it's so crowded. And I remember going to school in, like, it was a very small school in the area in Balbir Road, where I
Oh,
used to go.
at Riverdale. River
Uh, the Summerfield, the Summerfield.
Summerfield. Okay. Yes, I know that school. I know that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I remember the lanes, I remember the lychee and alm orchard, and I remember the serene and calm environment that was in Dalanwala, which is not there anymore. Like
Yes.
you do feel that this place, this area is a little different from rest of the Dehradun. Like Rajpur has its own charm, similarly Dalanwala as well. But then because I have seen it in 90s, so I know that it's not same anymore. And now even it's changing at such rapid pace that you feel sometimes disheartened with
Yes.
the
Yes.
modernization that's happening at such rate.
Yeah, Dalanwala was one of the most beautiful areas ever, absolutely. And people used to envy you when you used to tell them that you're living in Dalanwala. They used to think, oh, you're really privileged.
Yeah.
Orchards and those huge bungalows with those wonderful lawns and flowers. And, at one time, my school days, there never used to be any walls between the bungalows. There were only hedges with wild roses on them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the hedges used to separate the homes, and that was something so beautiful. No walls, and no
Right.
boundary
Right.
walls. So Dalanwala has changed extremely. Very greatly it has changed. So that Dalanwala we can never get back. I mean, not that we're going to get back anything that has gone, but that Dalanwala was like almost like a small haven, haven, absolutely.
True, true. And even there is this one chapter where you are mentioning the cassettes and DVDs and VCR times. And I remember that in my summer vacation, we got a VCR and we used to buy these CDs, and like back then we used to buy the cassettes, big bulky cassettes that we used to have, and we used to write down in a diary every movie that we have lended from the shop. And we used to keep a record of all the movies that we have seen, and the ones we enjoyed, the ones we didn't.
Yes.
And I really love that chapter because I was able to go back to that time when, as kids, we used to enjoy watching, as a family or everyone sitting together, even relatives coming over for dinner and lunch and enjoying a movie.
Yes, those days were very special.
Very
And those
special.
things have really sadly faded away. There was a little, there was a lot of charm attached to these things by us because they were not so easily accessible to everybody. And that easy access through technology that we have today, everything is in our hands. We can see anything, anytime, do anything. So that has made the charm go away, actually. So
Hmm.
that easy access to everything has lost, made it lose its value for us.
Right.
That's
To
what.
go like those times when we used to listen to FM Rainbow, The Broken Hearts by Loveleen Tandon, and the cassettes of Jagjit Singh. And one more thing that I was able to relate to, that even when I was a kid, I was not able to understand much of ghazals and Urdu, but still because my parents, they used to listen to Jagjit Singh and Chitra, and you have mentioned their album Unforgettable, I guess.
Unforgettable.
And yes, the song that one of the songs which is my favorite, uh, uh, उन कदमों की आहट ही जान
बहुत
लेते
प्यारा
हैं.
है। Even
Yeah.
yes, बहुत
Yeah.
प्यारा है, उन कदमों की आहट जान लेते हैं, तुझे ए जिंदगी हम दूर से पहचान लेते हैं.
जान लेते हैं, right? So even as kids, we used to listen to those cassettes, and we had that huge, big tape recorder of Philips with speakers almost as if we are owning like the DJ system. So
Yes.
those times they were really very beautiful, and I would definitely agree with the term that has been given to you, the nostalgia expert, because it was something that I felt very strongly, and how beautifully, how positively you have showcased the feeling of nostalgia in your book. And even I felt it in one of the chapters that I read from Memories of Another Day.
Okay.
So please, ma'am, tell something more about this book.
Memories of Another Day. That
Yes, yes.
that was another. I mean, 2015 December it came out, and that is also a collection of vignettes on Dehradun, Mussoorie, and not just Dehradun, Mussoorie, but also other things like this cassettes and things that are vanishing, which have vanished from our lives. The typewriter. So I put a photograph of my own little typewriter in that book and talked about how typewriters were so important at one time for us, and especially as a journalist, would be typing out my stories all the time. So things that the radio set, the old radio sets, what they meant to us as children, and how we looked upon them as some kind of magic boxes, and who's sitting inside and who's talking and all. We would ask our parents those kind of questions.
Right.
Those feelings, but Memories of Another Day is very special for me, because in that I put in my memories with great intensity, and there were too many things that I had included in that. Many things, old films and old songs, which I'm very fond of, the
Yes.
Hindi movie songs
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
golden era and the films of the golden era. That's what made me write an entire book on the golden era, because my fondness for it is very strong.
It
So,
is. And we get a glimpse of your love for Bollywood in almost all your books, in the articles that we found written by you. And it's like Bollywood is something which is like kind of so close to your heart that a book, particularly on it, was, well deserved one.
yes, and Bollywood, not really when it came to be known as Bollywood. I mean, the cinema of the earlier period, the 60s, especially the 60s and 70s to some extent.
Yeah.
That is what I have taken as the golden era in the book. And I think that time it was at its peak, with the music, all those famous Urdu poets writing lyrics, the great music directors, the wonderful voices. Those have never come back after that. It has been a kind of deterioration after that. You cannot have a kind of combination of such great artists that we had in the 60s and the early 70s. So all the classics were made at that time. So those have fascinated me greatly, and they have affected me in many ways. Here I would like to talk about Gulzar Saab's film Mausam, which is from 1975. It is based on A.J. Cronin's novel The Judas Tree. He made certain changes to the story, Gulzar Saab, but he did such an amazing adaptation of that novel in that film. It's got Sanjeev Kumar, Sharmila Tagore, and a film based on the theme of nostalgia and regret, repentance for the past. So that story is very beautiful. So when I saw that film, I was in school, and that affected me greatly. It moved me so much, that till today, even when if it comes every day on TV, I would watch it every day. So I can never get over it. It's so beautiful, and it has that favorite song of mine, Dil Dhoondta Hai Phir Wahi Fursat Ke Raat Din, Baithe Rahe Tasavvure Jana Kiye Hue.
That
So
is
that
beautiful.
is from Ghalib. But after those two lines, Gulzar Saab wrote his own couplets for the film. So if you have to see what nostalgia on the silver screen is, then it is Mausam, that film. It's
That is going to be definitely on my next watch list. And the song that you mentioned, it is indeed one of my favorites. And I cannot help but play it in the radio shows sometimes. And it's like amazing, amazing song, which definitely stands for the word nostalgia.
absolutely.
And your love for Bollywood has really like given me a window to those times which were back there. And definitely the charm of those actresses and directors and musicians is unmatchable indeed.
Absolutely. And the same goes for the cinema hall days of Dehradun and Mussoorie. I have written extensively about each and every cinema hall which has closed down. And
Yeah,
Prabhat has
heart
recently
and all.
closed, Krishna
Yeah.
Palace is closed. So, we have childhood memories of all these cinema halls and which movies we saw there and what did we do on that date, what did we eat over there. So, all those things come back to you, and you feel very sad that they have all had to close down because of commercial reasons. And Masuri had so many cinema halls, Rialto and Vasu and Picture Palace, so many of them, and they all closed. So I have written extensively about the closing, silver screens of this region. So that
Yeah.
is
It's like
because
an era lost, bygone, and we are just left with memories of it. And the new age generation, they are not really going to experience all that. And that particular things makes me feel sad that the kind of Dehradun or the kind of cities that we have seen, they are not going to witness the same charm like we did.
they
And coming to the
they will not witness and they will not miss it because they have not seen it. That is another sad thing, that they will not even miss it like we miss it now. They will not miss anything.
True. So coming to the point of Doon again, I have like noticed in the book Yesterday Once More, where you are talking about smart Doon. So, what do you think that which Doon was smarter, the earlier Doon or today's Doon, and what can we do to make it a smarter Doon, which is the Doon of today?
No, that was obviously the earlier one was much smarter. That was actually smart and it was absolutely amazing. Like people used to come and, see the city and they would say, oh, we envy you all that you live in this kind of a city. We want to live here too. So it was, and there was some other kind of people who would come and say, oh, this is such a sleepy town. So that name Sleepy Town was, it just stuck to Dehradun for a long time. And they say, oh, it's too sleepy for us. Certain
The
people would come from.
place for people who have got retired.
And that's why it was called the city of town of grey heads and green hedges. But today, it is green heads and grey hedges now. The hedges are
Want
polluted.
to go back to them.
So the green hedges and gray heads were typically, that was typically true of Dehradun, and all the children after school, they would just go away to other cities for university and college, for higher studies, and only the retired people were mostly here. So you would not see many young people in Dehradun. You will see school children, but not after that. That thing was missing, the college students you
Yes,
would
yes.
not see. So but that was very good for the town, I think, that it had a typical character of serenity and leisure and a leisurely pace of life, and where you would find these addas, which are also vanished. You have these chai shops, tea shops, and they would be 4 or 5 very popular addas. in Dehradun. Addas, not in that sense, not the negative sense, but
Yeah.
like where people would get together for political discussions. Like you had the coffee house culture in Delhi.
Yeah. Yeah.
So similarly, the Addebazi in Dehradun was very popular. People would get together, some college students, some political leaders, youngsters, some professors of political science. They would all get together having chai there and chai samosas, and then discuss everything under the sun because they had so much leisure and the
Yeah.
pace of life was so slow. But and those that culture of Addebazi was very popular. It was really popular in Dehradun, and many people today also I meet who were part of those gatherings and still try to find some small adda somewhere. These days also they try to find.
Around all these addas, there used to be a huge tree, and there used to be chabutra or something, cemented place. And it was something which was really very unique to Dehradun. And you would find such trees to sit under with that chabutra and, the
Yes,
structure around the roots
they
of the
would
tree.
sit there, and if they don't have that kind of a thing, then it would be in the middle of the city. There was one near Prabhat Cinema, there was one near Ghantaghar. So one of them is still there. I think Delight. It's somewhere near at the beginning of Gandhi Road, Dispensary Road. Delight. That adda is still around, but not many people have time to sit for those discussions now. Don't have time.
Right.
So
And
it was in Mera Sheher, I have written one ghazal which says, uh, शहर में कई सब्ज ठिकाने थे, आशनाइयाँ थी क्या क्या, बड़े हसीन वो जमाने थे.
ma'am, we would love if you would recite some of the lines for us.
I just खुशियों के 100 बहाने थे. This is called बातें गुजर गईं.
Okay.
This is page 17.
Okay.
बातें गुजर गईं,
I
खुशियों
also folded the page.
बहाने.
So it was one of the poems that I really liked.
So, खुशियों के 100 बहाने थे, शहर में कई सब्ज ठिकाने थे, आशनाइयाँ थीं क्या क्या, बड़े हसीन वो जमाने थे. हर तरफ दोस्ती का था पैगाम, देहरा का सुकून दूसरा था नाम. फुर्सत के थे कितने ही रात दिन, और तरतीब से होता था हर काम. लेकिन अब गुजर गई वो बातें, बीत गई हैं वो चांद रातें. वादी खो गई है शोर गुल में, दोस्तों से नहीं होती अब रोज मुलाकातें. दोस्तों से नहीं होती अब रोज मुलाकातें.
Wow, mesmerizing. Please, please, if you can read one more. This was really mesmerizing.
Okay, thank you. Which one? Something about Dehradun?
Yeah.
Pyara Dehra. I can read Pyara Dehra.
Yeah.
देहरा से मोहब्बत का ये सिलसिला, यहाँ रहते रहते बस चलता ही चला. देहरा से मोहब्बत का ये सिलसिला, यहाँ रहते रहते बस चलता ही चला. प्यार हुआ था इस वादी से पहले दिन ही मुझे, दूर होकर इससे मुझे जीवन लगा ना भला. हर बार लौट आई इसी के दामन में मैं, किसी और शहर में मुझे सुकून ना मिला. इसकी गलियां लगती हैं आज भी बड़ी प्यारी, इसकी गलियां लगती हैं आज भी बड़ी प्यारी. ये अलग बात है कि अब है भीड़ का काफिला. ये अलग बात है कि अब है भीड़ का काफिला. देहरा से मोहब्बत का ये सिलसिला, यहाँ रहते रहते बस चलता ही चला, चलता ही चला.
एंड चलता ही रहे ये सेशन मैम. और आपने इतनी ब्यूटिफुली ये पोइट्री हमारे साथ रिसाइट की, एंड थैंक यू सो मच. एंड दिस इज वन बुक विच रियली टेक्स यू डाउन टू द रोड ऑफ नॉस्टैल्जिया एंड मेमोरीज, एंड टू नो अबाउट द प्लेस, अबाउट द सिटी, अबाउट माउंटेन्स, and that too through Urdu poetry. So it's a beautiful, beautiful combination. And thank you so much, ma'am. We are now have to wind up the session, which I really don't want to. Honestly, I don't want to. But yes, before going, I would like to ask you to share some tips, some experience, or something, out of your wisdom box with our viewers, that how to keep that charm of bookstore reading, to buying books from the bookstore, and to get back into the feel of books, and that whole aura around the field of writing and reading. So yes.
I think we should not lose hope. I think people will one day come back in big numbers to the bookshops, because as I have written in Yesterday Once More, the scent of a bookshop.
Yes.
That feel, that experience, they would like to go through it. I hope that till that time the bookshops are there. The way we are losing the bookshops these days is really terrible. It's very sad. And just like the cinema halls, the bookshops are also closing down. Many of the famous bookshops in Delhi have closed already. So I think that all of us book lovers, we should somehow create that awareness and keep that feeling alive through our writings, through our talks, so that we can encourage. Like whenever we go to schools to give a talk, I always tell the students, please go into a bookshop, go to the library, feel the books. I try to kind of entice them. But I hope that it works. And as far as I'm concerned about my writing, I believe in the subjective style of writing, and I write in first person mostly. I like to write in first person and from my own life and about my own feelings. It's an emotional kind of connect that I want with the reader. And I usually, and I don't think I will ever go in for the writing where you imagine a place and exotic things happening and exotic kind of characters there, strange characters. I would like to write about people whom I know or people whom I remember. So it's very personal. My writing is very personal, and that is because of my temperament. I would not have been able to do that kind of objective, kind of, crafted writing. So it's very spontaneous, and it touches the hearts of emotional people.
It
So
does. It does.
yes.
It
So
does.
I think that if a writer is given to this kind of style, then they should follow it. They should follow their heart. They should not
And
try.
you're master of it.
Thank you.
So, congratulations, ma'am, on your upcoming book, Golden Era, and congratulations as well for your latest book, Yesterday Once More. And even I loved the collection of the poetry, Mera Sheher, deep from my heart. It was amazing. And thank you so much for joining us today. It was indeed very informative, very emotionally connective session with you, and hope our viewers also enjoyed the session where we went down the memory lane and yes, talked about nostalgia and everything from the nostalgia expert as well. So
Yes.
thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us.
Thank you, Shubhi. It was a great honor and pleasure to be on the session today with the book nerds. And I'm really grateful for you. I mean, for you to have read so much from my work and then gone
It
so
was a
deep into
pleasure
it.
indeed.
Much, Shubhi. Thank you.
And thank you all the viewers for joining us. Thank you so much.
I thank all the viewers who connected. Thank you.